Hey guys, so quite the week this week in markets. So wanted to go over a few things that happened, see what I was thinking last week and what I'm paying attention to in the week ahead. So going into this week, we had talked about how we had closed below this monthly order block, and to me, the next obvious draw was the area immediately below it. We essentially tagged it perfectly before bouncing. The problem is, sorry, this is monthly order blocks. The problem that happens is we are putting in this bullish divergence if you pull up some oscillators, but what I didn't love is the fact that we have this monster rally that just completely engulfs the previous 3 days candles and then immediately rejects back down after filling in some of this fair value gap. I've seen a few people post about this. I'm by no means an expert on Fibonacci's, but I do look at them occasionally, where you basically have a 50% retracement of the bull market that we've had for the last 2 years. So a lot of confluence in this zone. Not only is it this monthly zone, not only is it this 50% retracement level, I think you've actually got some moving averages here as well. Let's just pull those up and see. I think it's a 200 week, is it? Let's just see. Yeah, you've got the 200 week moving average there as well. Anytime you have confluence like this, it means different styles of traders are all paying attention to these levels. So maybe you're an order block trader, maybe you're a Fibonacci trader, maybe you're a moving average trader. It doesn't matter. When you have all of this confluence, it's just a lot more people with a lot of different systems paying attention to the exact same zone, so you can get some pretty violent swings. So we closed barely above the 200 week on the S&P futures. I'm just going to actually check the CFD. We closed under it. It'll be interesting to see how that sort of plays out in the coming days. But to me, we're sort of in this make or break zone because we had such a huge move yesterday in the negative area. You kind of want to see that reverse early next week. You don't really want to start screwing around too much with digging deeper into these fib zones. So a lot of people talk about, 618 retracements, 786, things like that. If it starts coming much below 35.50, it's too low. Like, it's got to hold some of this rally. I don't like that it rejected like it did. To me, what it's doing is just bouncing between some key 12-hour levels. So what I was looking for is this 12-hour fair value gap to get filled, which we did. So we tagged that perfectly and then nuked it down. So it's trading very, very, very technically. And, we're sort of at a spot where I don't have a clear view right now. What I want to see before I start getting long is 1 hour market structure breaks. So this was an area to me that once we started swinging all of these lows and getting back above them, that's an easy long. Like, it's scary at first, but once we SFP this level into a key zone, like, you have to get long. For me, it was targeting these old highs and then the fair value gap. I closed most of my longs in the morning here. I was in some option plays and a few futures contracts. I just didn't like the price action we were getting, especially on lower time frames. It just looked like an obvious up thrust, and then we dumped. What I want to see early next week is for us to pretty much instantly start bouncing. Maybe we dip a little bit lower, test this monthly zone again, but we need to start reversing. If we start taking out these lows, I think it's going to get really, really ugly. And to the downside, if you start taking out those lows, I think you have to be looking next towards the pre-COVID highs at like 3,200. which isn't great, right? So from a weekly and daily perspective, what I was saying my objective was when we were putting in this bullish candle, I was saying, okay, we have bullishly broken market structure to the upside with this candle close, right? Candle close through it. I wanted to see us retest this zone right here. So I wanted us to retest this zone, and then I wanted to see us basically come down, test the zone, and then take out these highs. What I didn't want to see is what we're doing right now, which is instantly dump into it. I wanted to see sort of like maybe we come up, fill in the fair value gap, test back down, go. So what we need to see now is, can we recover this 12-hour zone, and can we start putting in bullish price action above? If we flip this zone, I'll feel better about chasing the highs, but if we start trading under it and this becomes resistance, you have to be targeting the lows because this looks awful. So on the 1 hour, we've clearly broken structure to the downside. You test into it perfectly and puked. Not a good case for the bulls, but let's see how early next week shapes up. So on the NASDAQ side of things, you sort of have a similar picture. It just has a much uglier view, right? So like you've closed under this monthly zone, you've closed under this monthly zone, barely, but we did it. And now you're trading below it. So to me, the obvious draw has to be COVID, pre-COVID highs. That's going to be really ugly if we actually get there. You're essentially just removing everything that's happened in the last 2 years. So another 15% down. Let's see. It closed under the weekly 200 and it stayed under it for 2 weeks in a row, 3 weeks in a row now. You are in this weekly cluster, so could be an area of interest. I don't have as clear of upside here on NASDAQ. So like S&P has pretty equal highs. I think you could argue these are relatively equal highs, which is fine. But same thing, you want to see this zone flip and start pushing. The thing I don't like is NASDAQ closed under this order block breaker area where S&P is closing in it. So NASDAQ has some work to do to flip this and get out of it. If we are talking about Bitcoin, nothing has happened. We've been in a completely sideways range. We've basically been looking at this prior all-time high area as areas of interest. And it's continuing to show that, yes, it is a significant level. People are paying attention here. But what you would expect when you come into a high time frame key zone like this is what initially happened, which is tag into it and then you get a 40% upside move. You don't want to keep bouncing into it like this, though. Like if you're bouncing into it, recovering, and then immediately bouncing back into it, smaller bounce back into it, like this doesn't look good. This looks like it wants to continue breaking down the level because the bounces are getting weaker and weaker and weaker. So not a good look. You want to see this turn it around. You've basically swept every single low except for the June lows. So we took out this guy last week, just barely, but we did. So we've taken everything out. So normally when you're sweeping a low like that, you expect the other side of the range. So maybe you're going to say like, this is your range. If you're being generous, you could tailor it down to like, that's your range, something more sensible. In either case, when you sweep the bottom, you expect mid-range, target 1, highs, target 2, and then, other side of the range, target 2, and then the highs, target 3. But we didn't really get a confident boost, right? We just swept it and instantly got rejected back down at, again, 12-hour order block. Like all that Bitcoin is doing is following traditional markets. It's not standing on its own whatsoever. So You swept these lows. Let's just get the range out of here. These lows have not been swept. So swept these lows and instantly went into this 12-hour order block, right? So just change the colors there. Nothing special here. You basically had a 12-hour market structure break here, ran the lows, came back into it to test it. That to me just looks like a bearish retest, and now we're going lower. What could be argued is, okay, we tagged into this bearish order block, but we've clearly broken structure to the upside. We've swept these lows, so now we're doing a bullish retest of like this zone here, right? What I am looking for is, I think this sweep is significant. And I am looking to take out some of these highs, especially these equal highs right here. That's such an obvious draw at 2,500. But in order for me to start thinking about doing that, I have to see a reason to get long in this zone. Like, you could just blindly long the top of the zone. So basically like right here when we tagged into it, and your stop should go below the zone if you're being super technical. I would probably give it some breathing room. But the reality is, like, usually on stuff like this, I put the stop near the last swing low, but you can't do that here. Like, if you do that here, your stop is 5% away. That's just a terrible risk to reward trade. And not one you really want to be taking. So the better move is to wait. We talk about waiting a lot when it comes to trading. Everyone wants to just like tick the bottom, immediately jump in on this candle, and then you're going to end up having this like crazy drawdown. So like at worst so far, you're down almost a full percentage point. Not something that you're going to feel great about, especially depending on your position size. So what am I doing now? I'm waiting for a reason to get long. I want to see hourly bullish market structure come into play. So I want to see this flipped. Ideally, I actually want to see it close above here. And ideally, I want to see it close above this red zone. So it's the weekend. I'm not really looking to get too involved right now, but maybe we come back down one more time, come up, flip the zone, and then we're off to the races. One thing to keep in mind, though, is you have this cluster above that's likely to act as resistance. So maybe you want to be even more conservative and you don't want to take a trade until we, come up and flip this zone, and then you're targeting higher. I think that's fine too. But I'm fine getting involved once we put in some bullish PA, flip this 12-hour zone, then I'm targeting higher. So what does that look like on the 12-hour? Once we get outside of this zone and have flipped it, target 1 has to be these highs, and then target 2 has to be these equal highs up here, which is these guys that haven't been taken out. So ideally you're coming down to the low time frame. Probably want to see one more dip lower. I'm assuming there's divergence coming in there. Let's see. So far, no, it's convergent, so that's not great. So we'll see how it shapes up. There doesn't have to be divergence, but could be a nice addition. But what you're really looking for is, if you're trying to get long, you want to get your stop loss closer than it is. So right now, it could potentially be all the way down in here, because the reality is, like, this can come way down in here and still be a valid trade. So you want to see bullish price action get put in, so that instead of your stop loss being all the way down there, maybe your stop loss ends up being here, closer, if we flip the market structure and the breaker. And now your risk to reward becomes much better. Even if your first target is this little zone above, it's still, from this example, 4.5R, if you're getting above that, you're looking at, a 13-hour trade, which is spectacular. So I'm just waiting. It's the weekend. Things like to screw around on the weekend, so I'm not trying to jump the gun, get involved. Another thing I would guide against is doing like low time frame market structure breaks, because you're going to get totally chopped out and screwed around with. And yeah, when you're in these big zones like that, you don't want to be like hanging around on the 5-minute, 15-minute chart, because those are easy to manipulate and you're not going to be able to see sort of like clear breaks. So like on the hourly, these are the two zones you're looking at. But if you're dropping down into the 15-minute, you could say, there's a market structure break. You could say, there's a market structure break. You could say, there's one. Like it, but none of these have resulted in anything meaningful. So something like this, I'm waiting for the 1 hour. Sometimes on stuff like this, I'll even wait for the 2 hour. Those are the exact same places, which is fine, but I think the higher time frame confluence is better. So I would love something like, your risk to reward is like down here, just a much tighter stop than you normally would have. So that's what I'm looking for. On the short side of things, I'm sort of just sitting on my hands. Like I don't have, your short opportunity was here. This was your short, right? We came into this 12-hour zone. We broke market structure here. We tagged up into it and then puked. You could have entered here as well. Didn't really get the retest. It didn't make it that far, and then it just sold off. So this was an obvious sell also, because it was the top of the 2017 all-time high. Right, so that combined with your breaker play, we'll just make this purple so it's different. Purple, go down to the 1 hour. It's a pretty easy thing to short, right? Like SFP, weak, market structure break, retest. Like that's a super duper easy trade with a very, very tight invalidation. So target one is the old lows. This was wrong. What happened? There we go. Target one is the old lows, so 3.5 R just from that. And that's nothing special. Like you didn't even have to do anything spectacular there. You could have also entered on this candle close if you wanted to, but I usually don't advise it. I don't advise that because you want to wait for a retest. So anyway, I think the short, if you're not already in it and you're looking to get short again, it's probably worth just waiting, because there's no clear reason to short again. I mean, you could say that, okay, if we get under here and we flip this breaker negative, sure, target the lows. But to me, if you're targeting the lows here, like your objective has to actually be the lows, like the ones from June. It can't be, you're not just targeting like here. Like we swept everything but June. Why would you just target here? To me, you have to target these. And I don't know if that's the obvious draw. To me, it's more because we've swept everything else. This is more obvious. These equal highs and then this fair value gap, that's more obvious to me than these lows that were just swept 2 days ago. But who knows? I don't know. So we'll see what happens early next week, and hopefully we have some clarity. So right now I'm hunting longs. I'm waiting for hourly market structure to break bullishly for me to get involved, and until then I'm sort of just sitting out. If you're trading crypto though, you need to be paying attention to equities. Like that's obviously driving everything still. You need to be paying attention to the dollar. We talked about this last week, I think, where I was saying that this is the monthly zone we've been paying attention to, And on the weekly time frame, everyone has been talking about this divergence that's building on the weekly. And I was saying how, yes, it's building on the weekly, but we've seen this happen before where it just builds and builds and builds and builds and builds, and it can take years to resolve. So like on equities, for example, you had weekly bearish divergence from January 2018, and it didn't resolve until the end of 2021, right? So you had 3 full years of weekly divergence. It's not enough to have weekly divergence to short something. You want to wait for a clear market structure break. And what I was saying is nothing about this looked bearish to me. I was saying like, look, we've had bullishly retesting an order block. We've had bullishly retesting another order block. When we were up here a few weeks ago and we put in this SFP candle, I was like, okay, that's fine, but I think all we're going to do is come in and retest bullishly this order block before moving up again. And that's exactly what we've done. So I wouldn't put too much weight into this divergence play. It's fine if you want to monitor it, but until you get a clear breakdown in market structure, you don't really want to be going all into risk assets. So what does a clear breakdown look like? Well, it looks like some sort of maybe daily market structure break, which we haven't gotten yet. We got it back here, and that's fine. You could have entered into risk assets and you would have had a nice little move. So this is basically July 18th until August 11th. What does that coincide with? Well, it's this whole rally in crypto. July 18th starts here, boom, launches into early August. So it was this whole rally was made possible by this and the dollar. This and the dollar. Okay, so you want to wait for something like that. We got a little bit of a relief when the 12-hour broke back here. So that was from September 26th until October 4th. So that's where we were here. You got a little bit of a pop into October 4th, put us up here. So nice little end-to-end 6% move. You want something like that to happen again for us to get bullish in crypto, for us to get bullish in equities. The other thing I would be looking for on crypto is if we come down and sweep these lows, I want to see us immediately get back above them, and then I'm targeting higher, right? So if we sweep them and we just stay below, that's not great, and especially if they become bearish supply or resistance, that's not great. What you want to see is something like this, where it's a sweep and an instant reclaim. So if you look at this on the hourly, you could have entered here. Like, that was a phenomenal trade, right? We swept these lows, closed above, so you could have entered on that very next candle, right? Entered on the next candle open, with your stop at the wick. That's it. Because like, if we wick back through these, that's where your idea is wrong, and you just target higher. This moved so fast that you could have just kept trailing stops behind each hourly. Once it starts consolidating, I would just wait to close it until you have a market structure break. So for this trade right here, you wouldn't have closed it until basically this candle closed right here. So you could have closed it as soon as it broke market structure there. Excuse me. Or you could have waited for the retest up here, which would have been a 6R. So worst case scenario, it's here, which is still 5.5, which is a phenomenal trade. So those are the kinds of plays you're looking for. We saw it again back in, what was it, like here, exact same setup, right? We swung these lows, here. Just make that like blue or something. Swung the lows, closed above. You could have instantly longed. You would have endured a little bit of heat. But then again, like you don't have to close the trade until market structure breaks, right? It broke it here. So maybe you only get a 1.2 R. But to me, all that was doing here is this isn't a key zone, excuse me, where you should be looking for reversals. You could argue that, well, it's just testing the bottom of this area here. Now it's going to pull back. So maybe you take profit here, or once we tag into this zone where it's just order blocks that haven't been tested. So maybe you take some profit, and then once we tag into here and it closes above, you re-enter, right? So these are great plays. I love these sweep plays. They're usually pretty nice. And that could have been a pretty solid trade. And there's not, like, you know instantly where you're wrong. It's not that difficult to do it. Same thing on the other side. Like, once you start, excuse me, sweeping highs, you take the short, stops at the highs. So for this play, we swept, excuse me, we swept all of these highs. You probably would have gotten stopped out at least once. So you would have gotten stopped out here for -1R. Jesus. But then once you do it again, get back in the trade once it sweeps again. So you're down -1R. Your next trade was just totally phenomenal, and worst case you're in for 14, right? So those are pretty good sweep plays. So let's just see how price action develops early this week. I want to see something bullish put in, but until something's clear, I'm just sitting on my hands. I'm all out of longs. I'm not in any shorts at the moment, so currently just waiting. I am coughing for some reason, so for now I'm going to sign off, and I will talk to you guys next week.